Because I've gained so many new followers and a lot of people have seen some of Joel's pictures and, said, oh, he looks so good, what happened? I thought I would come on and just explain um, why he ended up passing away. So, as most of you who've been following me know, Joel was hit by a car October 29th, October 28th, 2021. He was riding his bike home and he was 14 years old at the time. He suffered a severe traumatic brain injury. That brain injury left him completely disabled, unable to walk, talk, eat. He could barely move. For the first 2 years, Joel seemed to be pretty healthy. A lot of people who end up suffering traumatic brain injuries are constantly dealing with infections and in and out of the hospital. But for 2 years, Joel was actually really healthy. He rarely had even a cold. He even had COVID once, and that didn't really seem to affect him too badly. I was really grateful for that. However, April of last year was when his health really started to decline. He was winding up in the emergency room with high levels of CO2 in his blood and in hyperbaric um, respiratory failure. He was always usually transferred via helicopter or ambulance to Boston Children's Hospital, and they could never really figure out what was going on with him. It was really frustrating. I knew that something was wrong because he did not seem himself. He was tired most of the time. It started getting to a point where he wasn't able to even engage in his therapies, and they had to end up changing his goals to kind of meet where he was. So it was like overall, he just was declining. A couple weeks before Christmas of 2024, Joel wound up back in the ICU at Boston Children's Hospital. It was there that they explained to me that Joel's vocal flaps were paralyzed. This was why he had been having such a hard time breathing and why he wasn't able to expel the CO2 from his system. So when we breathe in oxygen, and then when we breathe out the CO2. Unfortunately, due to the fact that Joel's vocal flaps were paralyzed, it was keeping him from being able to do that properly. What they told me was that because of Joel's brain injury, there was nothing that they would recommend or could do to fix this issue. Basically, they said that all they could do was make him comfortable. This was my worst fear. Um, I had heard over the couple of years that since Joel had had his brain injury, that for people who have a DAI, which is a diffuse axonal brain injury, meaning that it's global damage to the brain, that these individuals are at a higher risk of actually dying within the first 5 years after their accident. So a part of me, just from what I was seeing since April of last year, this was my worst fear. I felt like I was seeing him deteriorate in front of me. And I guess, of course, I kept trying to find excuses and didn't really want to see it. But when the doctors finally told me this, I knew what they were trying to say. It was like for the first time I understood what these doctors had been trying to say to me all this time. So at that point, I requested to speak to palliative care. I met with palliative care, and I don't know if any of you have ever met with palliative care, but in this conversation, I really wanted to talk about what the options were for Joel and talk about end of life care for him. This is a very difficult choice to make, and it's not one that is made lightly, and there is a criteria that someone has to fit in order to be placed on hospice. Since Joel had his accident. My biggest thing for him had always been quality of life. No matter what, I wanted to make sure that Joel's life was comfortable, that it was a happy one, that he was getting something out of life, and that he wasn't in pain. We had reached a point where none of that was true for him. And so, as his mom, I it was time for me to make a decision for him. I contacted Joel's stepfather, his grandparents on his father's side, who then contacted his father, and I contacted my parents as well. And what I found out from all those conversations was that pretty much everyone had already been on that page, but nobody had, I don't think anybody had the heart to tell me, but everybody had been thinking it. Joel was discharged back to Cedar Crest, and I put a hold on starting hospice until the kids and I was going to be bringing the kids to New York City for Christmas, so we put him starting hospice on hold until we got back. Once we got back, I met with the hospice team. We had a meeting at the facility with sort of everyone who was going to be involved, and Joel was placed on hospice on the 8th of January 2025. Joel was on hospice for 9 days before he passed away. And I know that when I originally was talking about this process, I got a lot of backlash from people. I wouldn't say a lot, but there were definitely some people there who did not understand my choice. And all I can say that until you have found yourself in a position where you've had to watch your child go through the most unimaginable things that no parent should have to watch their child suffer through. And you don't understand. I miss him so much, but I also know that I made the right choice in letting him go with dignity and letting him be free. So people don't have to understand because they did not live that life. But that is why my son passed away.